Abbey Dental, sponsors of Women Today, for all aspects of today's dental care. Highly recommended throughout the Isle of Man.
Faster, my good afternoon. It is just gone 6 minutes past 2. I'm Christy DeHaven, and today we are back on the Conister Rock, where I'm delighted and maybe a tiny bit apprehensive to be joined by someone I would call a man of mischief, with a very recognisable voice and one or two famous catchphrases under his flat cap. He's a skilled tradesman, champion sidecar trialsman, after-dinner speaker and published author. He can hypnotise a chicken with a piece of chalk, and I'm not sure if these two things are related, but he's also the man tasked with keeping control of the world-famous purple helmets. I say keep control, Derry Kissack. That's probably not quite strictly true, is it? I don't think anyone can keep control of those boys, can they?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Derry here with the lovely Christy, and I'm glad she said it was Conister Rocks, because the lads all said they'd never, ever hear me on Women Today. So just let's clear that up first of all, that it is Conister Rocks. It's not Women Today. And yes, it's nice to be here. It's good to see everybody. So take it away, Christy.
Well, it's going to be you taking it away this afternoon, Derry. This is all about you, which I'm delighted to say. And we've got a packed show with lots of background about Derry and also his musical choices, which will all be very intrigued to hear, I'm sure, over the next hour. And we'd love to hear from you. You can text 166 177 or you can email studio@manxradio.com if you want to, I don't know, spill the beans on Derry. I'm sure there's some good stories out there that people have.
They may not be printable, but...
Does that mean they're not broadcastable either?
Well, it might be. It depends how broad-minded people are, really. And, well, we're fairly broad, Christy, aren't we?
How very dare you. But moving on, so let's come back to the purple helmets a little bit later on in the show. But Derry, let's go back to little Derry Kissack, because you were born and grew up in Crosby, weren't you? And I have to say, having read through the glorious book that you gave me, which is Do You Know Derry Kissack? As I mentioned, you are a published author. These are your memoirs. Having read through it, it just sounds like you had the most idyllic childhood in Crosby. Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, it was magical, Christy. It really was an open door village, Crosby, at the time, and I was born, as you say, at a very early age, and because it's what happens anyway. And my mum was great in her time. The door was open to all the kids in the village, and she would give them egg and chips or whatever was on the menu, and even the postman used to get his lunch sometimes. And old Robbie Kelly, he used to come in the house on a wet day, and she'd give him a bowl of soup, and probably held him up for quite a while, really. But everything happened. It all took place. And it's a great expression, really. It'll all take place. I still say, don't panic. It'll all take place. And we had an old Morris car at the time, and in the summer months, my mum would round all the kids up and all the neighbours' kids, and she'd say to them, run home and tell your mum you're going to Peel Shore. So we'd all get in the Morris and down to Peel Beach, and ice creams and in the sea all afternoon. It was absolutely magic times. And there's a stream that ran through Kissack's yard at Crosby, and full of trout. And we used to be down there soaking wet and absolutely saturated. And there was a mill dam at the top that used to drive a water wheel, and we'd be in that and soaked to the skin and tickling trout under the stones. And we used to go up to Ballahary Farm at the back and help John Nelson at the time and help in the hay. It was just a magical time, really. And all summer long, your mum couldn't get you in the house because in the evenings there'd be two coats on the ground and we'd be playing footy. And she'd be shouting, come in the house, come in the house. And of course we'd just shout, 5 more minutes, Mum, 5 minutes. And yeah, they were great days, really, magical.
And you have very fond memories of your parents, and you can hear it with you talking about your mum now and your dad as well, and your Uncle Henry's mentioned quite a lot in the book. And one of the things that you mention as you go through the book is that sort of the moment when you realise, looking back, that they gave up a lot for you to have that sort of quality of life as children, didn't they? Because they were hard times.
Well, they were hard enough times, you know. That we never ever went hungry, and we always did well, I think, really. You know, it wasn't poverty or anything like that, but I mean, at the time there were poor families, and they had to get on as best they could. A lot of farm workers at the time with quite big families, I would think, and there really wasn't much money about. But money really is not the priority. It was the neighbourly aspect, and other people would look out for you, and if you were in mischief, the neighbours would give you a thick ear as well. And I'm quite an advocate of just not cruelty to children, but a bit of a smack on the bottom or a thick ear now and again never did us any harm. Well, I don't think it did, but well, I'm still here all these years later, and I think it teaches you some respect.
I think, yes, respect is needed, I think, in today's society. But you mention it, you're still here. It's kind of a miracle that you are still here, Derry, because one of the things I also noticed reading through the book, my word, you've had some drama in your life, haven't you?
Well, I suppose I've caused a few as well. I've caused a few dramas, but I've had a fair few accidents and broken bones and a few serious illnesses. But I try to put that to the back of my mind, because I think, well, I've had wonderful care from friends and neighbours, and especially my lovely Tricia. She's looked after me and seen me through a few rough patches, really, because, yeah, I did actually die a couple of times. And I can tell you, Christy, it's no big deal, really, you know. It's like the two Ronnies used to say, death can be fatal, you know.
I love it. Well, one of the things that we do on the Conister Rock, of course, is we do share music with people as well. And so I've tasked you with choosing just 5 songs, which I know is quite cruel, isn't it? Because it's really hard to get down to just 5 songs. But let's give people a bit of a taster. Let's hear what your first song is. Tell us what it is and why you've chosen it.
Well, I'm not normally a great fan of Oasis, but the one in particular that I do like is called Whatever, and there's quite a lot of violin and nice orchestra involved in it, and it really is a lovely song. But I think the Gallagher fellas are a bit arrogant, if you like, but I quite like this song, Christy.
They're arrogant, but they make some good music. So this is the first choice of my studio guest this afternoon, Derry Kissack. If you've got any questions or comments for him, we've had a few come in already. 166 177. This is Oasis and Whatever.
And I'll sing the bluesy fly ones. I'm free to say whatever I like. If it's wrong or right, it's alright.
Oasis. Whatever, and it's the first choice of my studio guest this afternoon, Derry Kissack. I think some people might be quite surprised about you choosing Oasis, Derry.
I should imagine they will be, because those boys are from Manchester, aren't they?
Well, but you nearly didn't spend all of your life here, because you almost emigrated to Canada, didn't you?
Yeah, we did in the 1950s. I think it was about 1957 or 58, and things were really quite, you know, very quiet in the building trade. And my dad had a cousin in Canada who had a big lumber mill, and he wanted to retire, and he almost persuaded my dad to go, because at the time they were doing the 10 quid fare to Australia, a 10 quid fare to Canada, to start a new life there. And I think we only stayed because my granddad took bad, and well, I'm glad we did, because I'm Manx through and through, as you can probably hear. And I love the place. I'm always glad to get back. I call it home, to the Isle of Man. It's a wonderful place to live. And people that moan and groan about things, they should stop for a moment and see what a lovely place we live in, and what a safe environment. And it's just beautiful. And like my old dad used to say, it might cost a bit on the boat, but look at it this way, son. He used to say, it keeps the riffraff out.
Brilliant. Oh, he's full of wisdom, this man, isn't he? And other stuff as well. So we're having some lovely messages in. Fran Dooley wants to say hello to you, Derry. So there you go. We've also had, I bet the stories behind all of these that we're probably not going to go into. Richie Creer has asked us something that I'm not going to repeat, because he wants you to tell a story that we're just not going to go there, are we, Derry? No.
I can't, Richie, I think I know the one you mean, and I can't just broadcast that at the moment.
I think there'll be a few more of those. Jew and Dogger has messaged in as well. John Dogg's son, he's messaged in too. And I'm gonna run this phrase by you before I say it on air in case he's trying to get me into trouble, which Jew probably would do. But if you've got any messages for Derry, we'd love to hear from you. 166 177. You can email studio@manxradio.com. We'll get the ad break out of the way, and then we'll have much more music and chat with Derry over the course of the next hour.
One Dental Clinic, sponsors of Women Today, offer convenient appointment times in the heart of Douglas, so you can fit your dental care into your working day.
And you are on the Conister Rock this afternoon with myself, Christy, and Derry Kissack. We're having great fun in the studio here. But before we move on with more questions, I've actually got a shout out to anyone that's in the vicinity of Manx Radio or in the building. If anyone happens to have a harmonica, bring it up to the studio, because Derry's got a party trick, haven't you?
It has to be in D.
If it's in D, then he'll show us his party trick. So if anyone's got one, do drop it up. In the meantime, yes, we are sharing music and memories with Derry. Do not adjust your sets. We have the world famous commentator with us. World's finest, I'm going to call you. The world's finest commentator. And it says here, President Derry Kissack as well.
Oh, really?
What fools made you a president then, Derry?
Well, I do hold the honour of being the president of the Southern Motorcycle Club. That it's an honorary post, obviously, that I've held for some years after being the chairman for many, many years. And, well, they honoured me with being Mr. President. So I'm very proud to say, after some 40 years with the Southern Motorcycle Club, the off-road club, that, I'm still above ground. That's what I tell people. I was 70 the other day, and the girls on the livery yard gave me a T-shirt, and it says on it, "I'm still above ground."
It's a great phrase. And speaking of, you've got a long history, obviously, with motorcycles and motor vehicles in general. And I think it was 1964, was it, when you bought your first trials bike? What do you remember of that?
Well, it's a mixed blessings, really. I've been on motorbikes since I was about 8 or 9, and mainly things made up out of junk. And the first one, I think, was a little cycle motor that fitted on the front wheel of a push bike, and it wasn't very good, but we progressed to BSA Bantams and then to Villiers engines, and by the time it was 1964, I had my eye on a Greaves Scottish trials bike, and I eventually bought that and started in trials, and I've had a wonderful life, really, in the motorcycling fraternity, where there's absolutely no hassle, there's no argy-bargy as such. Everybody's good friends, and it's a wonderful way to spend your life, really, because, I went into sidecars after that, and only because I couldn't afford a better bike. You could buy an old 4-stroke trials bike and put a sidecar on it and have a great time with that for 10 quid. And at the time, I was only getting £2 or £3 a week as an apprentice joiner. And, I'm glad I did, really. And there's a great gang of guys involved in it all.
So why trials then, and not roads and racing in that respect? Because obviously with the TT here,
there is a reason. When I was 16, I went to watch the Southern 100 with some mates, and quite fancied that, because I did like Greaves bikes, and at the time there was a Greaves Silverstone racer, and I was keyed up. I was going to buy one of these, and I went home and told my mum. I said, "Mum, I'm going to buy a Greaves Silverstone when I save up enough money." And she said, oh, really? Well, you can find somewhere to live if you do that, because you're not going to live here, and I'm not going to worry about you. And she made lovely bonnegs and things, and I didn't want to leave home.
Oh, isn't that nice? That makes sense. And even though you did have a fair few crashes anyway when you were out and about, but you had some really good successes with your sidecar trials, didn't you? And you and your passenger Phil had a lot of wins together over about 30 years or so, wasn't it?
We did indeed. We won lots of things, and it all seems like many. Well, it's 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and the years go very quickly. But we won most of what was about to be won, and did well in national trials and things. And it was a great time for us, really.
And there was also a revolutionary invention as well. Tell us about that.
Well, this goes back to my great friend Billy Cleland up at Langigan Farm. And if you're listening, Billy, I won't let any secrets out. But he invented this thing called the Cleland adjustable wheel. We had it fitted on the sidecars, and he had one and I had one, and they were revolutionary, where the sidecar, you could alter the camber of the bike, and like Freddie Dixon in the TT in 1923, he had the revolutionary banking sidecar, but he didn't do trials with his, and Billy invented it for trials. So if you're listening, Billy, the cat's out of the bag now.
Now, speaking of the TT as well, you managed to get sort of quite a unique perspective on the TT course, didn't you? Because one of the firms you were working with, Kissack Brothers, actually got to be the course contractor, didn't they?
Well, yes, we were offered that job actually way back. I think it was 1972 or 73, and the late Ken Harding was a great friend of mine. His wife Ella was the matron at Noble's Hospital. They were really, really nice people, and Ken said to me one day that the contractor, Les Clark, was going to retire, and he thought that Kissack Brothers of Crosby would be just the firm to take it over. And we did start on it, and in total, I think my brother, after I'd left him, my brother did something like 35 years as the course contractor with his sons, and it was more than a third of the life of the TT itself, so it was quite a big piece of history.
And what were some of the biggest sort of challenges then? What were some of the things you actually had to do as part of that work?
Well, you put all the straw bags and the bales out and everything every year, but my brother invented a few things to make things better, and all the steps that you see along the side of the road at the grandstand where they step up to fill the quick fillers, he made all those, and he used to be quite innovative with it's quite hard to say innovative actually, but there you go. And he would make things to make the job better, and it was quite a good winter work scheme really, so there was a lot of history involved in it.
So you've actually been involved, like you said, in some of the big sort of history on the island, and as well you mentioned in your book, you're involved with laying what we think was the first tarmac runway at Ronaldsway even.
Well, I think that's true to say. We had a fleet of wagons there at Poortown, around about 1989 or 90, I think it was, and up till then the concrete, the runways had been done in concrete, I think, and well, this is the story that I have it anyway, and we were on a ton mile from Poortown, up through Foxdale and down Ballamorda, through Castletown and out along Derby Haven, and we'd come in the back gate to the runway by Hango Hill, and they were all little four-wheel wagons at the time, and I had Fords, and some of the boys had Bedfords and a few Leylands, but they've all disappeared now, all the little four-wheelers, and there was great camaraderie with the men. I think that's been lost really, because we were all privateers at the time, and there'd be Cranes from Foxdale and Kenny Kinraid from Laxey, and my brother Howard from Crosby, and Nelson Tarmac, and Terry Shepherd. There was dozens of these little wagons carting this tarmac, and it was good fun, I have to say. A part of my life, you know. It's I'd almost forgotten about that, Christy. That seems quite a while ago now.
See, that's why it's great that you've written your memoirs, so we can all read about it. And your memories are absolutely incredible, I have to say, the things that you remember. And one thing that really fascinates me is this sort of obsessive memory you have for registration plates, which you seem to remember people by their registration plates going back to the 50s.
Well, I have been taken to task on that a few times, I have to say, because one of my great mates, AJ, he said that the book I wrote was a great cure for insomnia. He said, you only have to pick it up, he said, and look at a few pages and it puts you to sleep.
Brilliant. Well, Derry, we are sharing music as well on today's programme. And your next song comes from the group Boston. Tell us about this and why you've chosen it.
Well, it reminds me really of the TT. Years ago, you know, TT music would come on Manx radio, and Manx radio is a very big part of the TT, as everybody knows, and long may it be so.
Thank you.
Boston, More Than a Feeling, and Santana, Smooth, and Meatloaf, those sort of things used to boom out, and you knew that Radio TT had started, and, you know, as I say, the Manx radio is a big part of the TT, and ironically, the Purple Helmets are now. They're a very big part of the TT. So I just love it. I love the atmosphere. I love the fortnight. And I feel like saying on Sad Sunday, which is the last Sunday, I feel like saying, don't go home. come back. And the island then seems to deflate. But that's why I like the TT music, and yeah, I hope everybody else enjoys it too.
It's a cracking song, Boston, More Than a Feeling, as chosen by my studio guest this afternoon, Derry Kissack, who's sharing music and memories with us. Speaking of music, I've got a message to read for you here, Derry. It might upset you a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Right. David Stevens, MBE, would like to say, first of all, hi Derry, so chuffed we both survived the Big C. Often think of our random meetings comparing notes. But Oasis, really? He's not happy with your music choice.
Now listen, Doc, it's my choice today. They'll have you on some other day now. You can pick your music, but I like that one, that particular song. And good to hear you, David. Good to hear you. Good man.
And we had a message here as well from Sparky, who says, great man, Derry. Always a tail in a cuppa when I delivered the post up there. Retired now, but I do try to pop up. So that's from Sparky as well.
Sparky Parkinson. Hey, boy.
And one more here, which I think you've got a story about with this one. Good to hear Al Kissack say hello from me. Had a big go at me 2 years ago, but the Big C had a big go at me 2 years ago too, but I'm still here. Neil Cleverly, you know that name,
Neil,
don't you?
hello, boy. Yeah, Neil gave us one of the Hondas actually for the team for the Purple Helmets, and I think it was 304 3-man or 303 3-man, the number of it, and it's still got the registration plate on, and it is actually the long bike that we use that seats 8. So Neil, thank you for that. Hope you're doing well, boy.
Fantastic. Well, we will be talking about the Purple Helmets in just a few minutes' time, but we're joined by Derry Kissack until 3 o'clock. So if you've got any messages for him, 166 177, or you can email studio@manxradio.com.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Abbey Dental, sponsors of Women Today, for all aspects of today's dental care. Highly recommended throughout the Isle of Man.
And we are on the Conister Rock this afternoon with the fabulous, world-famous commentator. We've got Mr. Derry Kissack with us at speeds approaching 100 miles an hour, no less. It's so lovely to have you with us, Derry, it really is. And we are going to talk about the world-famous Purple Helmets now. It actually started from an event with Steve Colley, didn't it? Tell us about that, how the Purple Helmets came together.
It did indeed, and Steve's great. He's still around. Hello, Steve. Hey, he's a good man, and he was appearing for the Southern Motorcycle Club because at the time the story is that the club was very short of funds, and we had helped Steve previously in his career, and he agreed to do a show for us, and he said, "Well, I can't just keep going all evening. I need a backup act." So that's where we came in, you see, and I knew the lads at the time. They had these big coats and Hondas and things, but they were just sort of messing about a bit and going to the 6-day enduro with them. And I suppose I got the credit really for getting them into show business, Christy, if you could call it show business. It's absolutely madcap stuff. And to start with, there was just 8 of them. But a fantastic thing that people, you could lip read them as these 8 people appeared with these coats on. I can't say the actual words, but if you could lip read, it was quite something to see the crowd doing this. And the only piece of ground we could think of at the time was a bit of a test track behind the testing station up at Tramode, and it must have been the worst place possible, really, because you know how an amphitheatre rises up above the venue. Well, this actually fell away below the barrier so that nobody could see. But it turned out to be such a great success that from then on we got Oncon Stadium, and we actually did 22 years, or possibly, 22 years we did in the stadium, and it was a huge pull in TT week with thousands of people being entertained, and it's sort of mind-blowing really to think that at the start nobody had ever heard of us, and it was very tongue-in-cheek. The lads decided they'd wear dark glasses and look cool, and I think it was Jimmy Davidson said, well, we'll call ourselves the world famous Purple Helmets, purely because nobody had ever heard of us. And now, ironically, they really are world famous. They've travelled the world.
They have, haven't they? And it just an interesting note, because I didn't know this until I read your book, that actually it was originally Roy Moore, wasn't it, the sort of commentator for them at the very, very beginning days. But then, as you said, you sort of took over and...
Well, Roy was very clued up on Steve Colley. He'd followed his career, and he knew everything Steve had done and how he came to be British champion and that sort of thing. Well, that was a bit out of my remit, but... Roy, he'd be the first to admit when he first saw the Purple Helmets and they started to fall off. I think he was a bit nonplussed by it, and eventually he did hand it over to me and chucked me in at the deep end, really, because Roy had done quite a lot of commentating by this time at the races, and apart from a few obituaries and eulogies, I hadn't really done very much. Maybe a bit of after-dinner speaking here and there, but I sort of had to get on with it, and I mean, that was 22 years ago, I think, and that's what I do now.
And there's such brilliant humour to it. How on earth you manage to somehow just keep it on the edge of clean for the children in the audience, I don't know, but you do manage it every single time. But I wonder if some of that comes from, because you were part of a youth club, weren't you? And you used to do the odd sort of comedy sketch in a youth club when you were young.
Well, that was great stuff. That was at the Methodist Hall in Crosby, in the Station Road, as we used to call it. I think they call it Old School Road now, but it was always Station Road when we were kids. And there was lots of stories down there as well. But the youth club was run by the Gelling family and our great neighbours from Woodley next door. And there was Vorry and Joyce and George and especially Johnny Gelling. And they more or less ran the youth club and looked after all the youngsters in Crosby. And they were a wonderful family roundabout. And they used to put on a show for the ploughing match concert and that sort of thing. So from the age of, 9 or 10, I got into being a bit of an entertainer, I suppose, but not of any much quality. But we all did our best. That was how it started.
And although I think it's safe to say that you weren't really a fan of school, or maybe it wasn't a fan of you one way or the other, but
I was not. I was not.
But having said that, you did just say off air to me that some of the things that you learnt at the collegiate have actually helped with your commentating.
I think so. In life in general, I must say I never liked the collegiate school. It was quite a Victorian private school up at Mount Bradder, and the teachers were two spinsters, Lottie and Eileen Reid. But the happy bit for me was that their brother was Bertie Reid, and his daughter married Jeff Duke, and Jeff Duke had all his trophies at the collegiate school, so that lightened the mood a bit. I didn't mind going to school because I could see Jeff Duke's trophies. And they were hot on English grammar, English language, and it has stood me in good stead in life through with good grammar and punctuation and that sort of thing. And consequently, I always found English to be my best subject. It was very easy to follow, and that's probably because of the collegiate school. But I was quite glad to leave there, actually, in about 1957, I think it was. Quite a long time ago, Christy. And went to Braddon School. And the reason we went to Braddon School instead of Marown School was that Braddon, believe it or not, they had flush toilets. And at Marown School up on the hill, they still had dry toilets there well into the 1960s. It's hard to believe now with all these modern schools, but the kids were still sent out at a very much higher level than the education system today, I feel. When we left primary school, we could read and write. And I think it's a bit sadly lacking now. Everybody has to use a spell check. And I shouldn't preach, really, so you'd better cut me off now.
Well, do you know what, then? It's a perfect time to put your next song on, which has the lyrics, "You say it best when you say nothing at all." So tell us why you've chosen this one, Derry.
I've chosen this. It's very special to me. I remember being at a lovely wedding in the Grand Island for Andy Walton and Denise, and this was playing, and I'd met my Tricia about possibly, I don't know, 6 months previously, and I think when this played, I suddenly realised that I loved her, and this is why I love this song.
Try as they may, they can never define what's been said between your heart and mine. The smile on your face lets me know that you need me. There's a truth in your eyes saying you'll never leave me. The touch of your hand says you'll catch me wherever I fall. Say it best when you say nothing at all.
It is a beautiful song, and it's certainly showing that Derry Kissack has a soft side. You do, don't you, Derry? That is a beautiful piece of music. And just remind everyone again who you're dedicating that one to.
I'm dedicating that to my lovely Tricia. I don't know if you're listening, darling, but love you loads.
That is absolutely beautiful. So we are joined by Derry Kissack just for another sort of 10 minutes or so. We've got some lovely messages coming in. One from Jane here, who says, Derry was a young fellow and I knew him working at Doughty's. Do you know who that is, Jane from Doughty's?
I think I do. I think it's Jane Waters, and I haven't seen you for 50 years, Jane, but you're always a good girl, a good laugh, eh? Top girl.
Isn't it funny how that can happen on the Isle of Man, that you can still be on the same island and not see someone 50 years? Billy messaged in to say, I'm listening, enjoying the programme and your memories. I'm still above ground yet. Pop up and see me sometime.
And that's me old mate Billy Cleland. Hey boy, help me up. Hey.
So there you go. And one from Broken Davy here saying the Test Centre show that I think was 94 or 95. I was there. Good show that. And then he repeats one of the phrases that you say that I'm not going to say on air. But there you go, that as well.
Great things from Little Acorns, Davy. Hey,
do you know what? That's a lovely link, that right there, Derry, talking about great things from Little Acorns, because you suddenly decided one day to buy a derelict farm. And 20-something years later, you've rebuilt it and it's where you live now. What on earth made you decide to want to do that?
Well, there was a reason for that as well. There's usually a reason. And I had a great old mate at work, Mike Corris, who used to drive the digger for Skillicons. And he said to me one day, do you want the old fire station down in Lord Street? He said, I've got the chance to take it down. And if you'll help me, you can have the steel work. And I said, yes, we'll do that, Michael. I think it was for Billy Corkish, the builder. And we took it down and I stored the steel with a view to using it for my building business and a new workshop, you see. Well, I looked all over the place to put this shed up and couldn't find anywhere. And one day I was working up at Ballacane for Chris Kenyock and the Kenyock family, and I looked over the wall and I could see a derelict farm, and eventually I got to buy it just to put the shed up. That was all it started with. And when I'd bought the farm, I thought, well, why am I bothering with the building trade? So I packed up the building trade, and I kept the digger was brand new at the time, and a digger and a lorry, and I drove them all day, every day for my business, and got enough money out of that to gradually rebuild the farm a bit at a time. So every night when I came home from work, I'd get the mixer going and get stuck in and start working on the buildings. And one by one, I saved the buildings that were there, and then I did put the fire station building up, and that's my main garage now. And I built some other buildings and a new house, and I really love it, and I'm very proud of it. And consequently, I have become a bit of a farmer. I don't suppose I'm a real farmer in terms of cows and sheep, but I look after Stan Skinner's sheep all winter, about 150 sheep, which I enjoy. And then when they're gone, we put the dung back on the land, often with the help of my old friend Fred Clegg. Fred's a great neighbour. And crop the hay. We've just got some lovely haylage there now and filled the barn. And I really love what I do, Christy. I wish I'd packed up the building trade years before, really.
But then I guess you wouldn't have necessarily had the skills, sort of in place to be able to do what you've done with the farm. And you've got 45 acres there, and you've got horses in livery and all kinds of things. It must be never a dull day on Derry's farm.
Never a dull day. And I love to see people, but Tricia looks after all the horses and the liveries. She's brilliant at all that sort of thing, and a wonderful rider and eventer herself. and she knows what she's talking about. And that's, I've always thought in life, it's no good doing something if you don't do it right. And you've got to do it right. You've got to know what you're talking about. So I've never really got into the cattle and stuff because, well, I wouldn't know what I was doing, to be quite honest. But I'm having a fair go at the old horse ranch. And I'd like to thank everybody that helps me with it. And, yeah, you know, the boys rally round for the hay and that sort of thing. Ah, wonderful times, wonderful times.
It just seems like, you know, just talking to you over the course of this last hour or so, and obviously we could talk for hours, but unfortunately we've pretty much run out of time. We need to hear a bit of your last song. But it seems like you've really hit on something, Derry, in that you've really sort of worked out what it is that makes it a good and happy life. What sort of advice would you give to someone who's just thinking, oh, I don't really know how to do this thing called life?
Well, I think that the answer to it is to be decent to people and, you know, don't do anything to anybody else that you wouldn't do to them, and do your best for people. And believe me, it's not about money, because I haven't died a couple of times. I can tell you something. The money really wouldn't make much difference to that. And contentment is the spice of life. Absolutely, contentment. Enough is enough, and enough's all you need. You don't need to be a millionaire and be mean with it. The money's it's made round to go round, and I think that's what's it's brought me happiness, that I try to help a bit with charity and that sort of thing. And well, I love people and love your neighbours, and I think it rubs off, and they'll come and help you if you help them. I think that's the secret to it, Christy.
And it is a perfect link into your final song choice. Derry Kissack, what have you chosen to end the show with this afternoon?
Well, you know, Tricia loves the Elton John stuff, and I must say I do love this particular song. You know, it's very special to me. It says, "Can you feel the love tonight?"
You're a softie at heart, Derry Kissack, aren't you? If you've missed any part of today's programme, we'll be able to listen back to it again and watch bits of it on the Manx Radio portal after the show. But for now, Derry, thank you and goodbye.
Well, thank you for having me, Christy. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for texting in. Cheers, everybody.
To the rush of day, when the heat of a rolling wave can be turned away, an enchanted moment, and it sees me through. It's enough for this restless warrior just to be with you.
One Dental Clinic, sponsors of Women Today, offer convenient appointment times in the heart of Douglas, so you can fit your dental care into your working day.